Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking and unbelievable events caught on camera, the night blast that tore through the Crimea Bridge. The footage that surfaced sent shockwaves across the world, not only because of its intensity, but also because of the political and emotional weight it carries. This wasn't just an explosion, it was a moment that symbolized tension, defiance, and the harsh reality of ongoing conflict. The video begins under the cover of darkness, a quiet night over the Kerch Strait, where the iconic bridge connects Russia to the annexed region of Crimea. Everything appears calm until a sudden burst of light cuts through the night sky. The explosion erupts with terrifying force, lighting up the water below as flames consume the bridge's structure. Within seconds, what was once a symbol of Russian pride becomes an inferno of chaos and destruction. Viewers who first saw the footage could hardly believe their eyes. The bridge, known officially as the Crimean Bridge, has been one of the most heavily guarded and strategically important pieces of infrastructure in the region. Built after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, it served as a physical and political statement, a connection that tied Crimea directly to the Russian mainland. To see it in flames was like watching a declaration of vulnerability. The clip spread like wildfire across social media. Some people were convinced it was a staged act, others believed it was a calculated strike. Analysts began dissecting every frame of the video, studying the direction of the blast, the type of fireball, and even the sound of the explosion. They wanted to know exactly how such a heavily protected structure could be hit in such a devastating way. As the footage continued to circulate, theories began to multiply. Some said it was a drone attack, others pointed to explosives planted on a truck. A few even suggested it could have been an internal sabotage, but no matter the cause, one thing was clear: this wasn't a random event. This was a message. For Russia, the bridge represented dominance and permanence. It was more than steel and concrete. It was a symbol of control over Crimea, built with pride and unveiled with grandeur. For Ukraine, however, the bridge was a painful reminder of loss, occupation, and defiance. To see it damaged, even partially, was symbolic, a strike not only at infrastructure, but at morale. When you watch the footage closely, you can see the sheer magnitude of the explosion. The shockwave ripples across the water, lighting up the horizon like a second sun. Vehicles on the bridge are caught off guard, some thrown off balance, others completely engulfed. Flames climb higher, metal twists, and smoke billows into the sky. It's a sight that doesn't fade easily from memory. After the blast, emergency services rushed to the scene. Russian authorities quickly cordoned off the area, claiming that the situation was under control. But satellite images told another story. Sections of the bridge collapsed, and parts of the roadway were completely destroyed. The damage wasn't just physical, it was psychological. This was a strike that carried deep implications. Militarily, it disrupted a key supply line. Politically, it exposed vulnerability. Symbolically, it shook confidence. It showed that even one of the most secure structures in the region could be breached, and that the war had entered a new, more dangerous phase. Experts began analyzing the blast patterns. Some said the explosion originated from below, possibly a water-based drone. Others noticed a truck passing moments before the detonation, hinting at an internal delivery of explosives. The official statements were vague, and both sides blamed each other. Ukraine denied direct responsibility, but celebrated the symbolism. Russia, on the other hand, vowed revenge. What made this footage so powerful was not just the explosion itself, but what it represented: the fragility of power. The bridge was a statement of unbreakable strength, and yet in one night, that statement was turned to ash. The world watched as fire consumed a monument built to last decades, undone in mere seconds. As images of the aftermath began to circulate, people couldn't help but notice the eerie beauty in destruction. The reflection of fire on the water, the glowing embers fading into the night, The stillness that followed the chaos, it felt cinematic, almost unreal. But behind that haunting imagery were real lives, real consequences, and real escalation. In the days that followed, Russia launched a wave of missile strikes across Ukraine, targeting infrastructure and power grids. It was seen as retaliation, a show of force meant to reassert dominance. Yet the damage to the bridge lingered as a wound both literal and symbolic. Repairs were swift but costly, and the bridge's integrity was questioned again and again. The footage became a defining moment in the modern history of this conflict. It reminded the world how quickly power can shift, how symbols can be shattered, and how even the strongest fortresses have weak points. The night blast was not just a military act, it was a psychological earthquake that rippled through nations. As experts revisited the clip frame by frame, they noted the precision of timing. The explosion seemed meticulously planned, executed in a way that maximized both impact and visibility. It wasn't just about destruction. It was about sending a message loud enough to echo across borders. Every flicker of flame in that video told a story of defiance, strategy, and war. The Crimea Bridge had long been a target of tension. Since its construction, it had stood as a contested symbol. For Ukrainians, its destruction meant justice. For Russians, humiliation. For the world, it was a reminder of how fragile peace can be, how quickly night can turn into chaos. What's chilling about the footage is how ordinary it begins. A quiet night, cars driving across, nothing unusual then, in the blink of an eye, everything changes. That sudden shift from calm to catastrophe mirrors the unpredictability of war itself. One second, routine, the next, devastation. The explosion's sound lingers deep, echoing, thunderous. It's the kind of sound that doesn't just ring in your ears, it stays in your mind. You can almost feel the vibration, the pressure wave, the silence that follows. It's haunting, surreal, and unforgettable. In the aftermath, as dawn broke over the Kerch Strait, smoke still curled from the ruins. The once proud bridge stood scarred, parts of it sagging, blackened by fire. Recovery crews moved in, cameras zoomed out, and the world collectively gasped. The footage had captured more than an event. It had captured a moment in history. What's remarkable is how this footage became a global focal point. Every major news outlet dissected it, every political analyst weighed in, every military expert speculated. It wasn't just about the blast anymore, it was about what it meant for the balance of power, for the morale of nations, and for the course of the war itself. People across the world watched in disbelief. Some celebrated, others mourned, but all agreed it was unbelievable footage, the kind that defines an era, that makes headlines, that lives on in memory. It showed the world that no matter how fortified something seems, nothing is truly invincible. As repairs began, the Russian government promised swift reconstruction. Officials stated that the bridge would be stronger than ever, a sign of resilience. But deep down, the psychological scar remained. The footage had already done its damage. It had exposed vulnerability, shaken confidence, and changed perception. Ukraine's reactions were subtle but telling. Officials hinted that the explosion was a beginning and not an end. For them, it was a symbol of resistance, proof that even the most powerful symbols of occupation could crumble. The footage became part of the narrative of defiance, spreading hope among supporters and fear among opponents. Meanwhile, online communities turned the video into a subject of intense analysis. Some slowed it down to 0.25 speed, identifying potential sources of ignition. Others mapped out blast radii and fire trajectories. It became one of the most studied pieces of war footage in recent years, dissected from every possible angle. The bridge's design, once praised for its strength, became a topic of criticism. Questions arose: how could an explosion cause so much damage so quickly? Was it structural weakness, or was the attack simply too precise? The answers remain debated, but the damage is undeniable. As the days turned into weeks, The shock began to settle, but the footage continued to resurface, replayed again and again. It served as both a warning and a statement that in modern warfare, even icons can fall overnight, that technology, strategy, and determination can overcome even the mightiest of structures. The psychological impact of the blast extended far beyond Crimea. For Russian citizens, it was a rare glimpse of vulnerability. For Ukrainians, it was a spark of hope. For the rest of the world, it was a moment of realization that this conflict was far from over, and that every symbol, no matter how grand, can be challenged. The bridge was eventually reopened, but something had changed. Its image was no longer one of strength, but of survival. It stood rebuilt, but the memory of that night remained burned into collective consciousness. The footage continued to remind everyone that control can be temporary, that power can be fragile. It's strange how a few seconds of video can encapsulate so much emotion, history, and meaning. The night blast through the Crimea Bridge wasn't just a moment of destruction, it was a moment of truth. It revealed the shifting sands of power, the unpredictability of war, and the resilience of those who refuse to give up. Even now, long after the fire has faded, the footage lives on. It circulates in documentaries, analyses, and discussions. It serves as a reminder that in the darkness of conflict, there are flashes of revelation moments that define generations. That explosion was one of those moments. As we look back, it's hard not to feel the weight of it. The sound, the light, the shock, the silence all captured in one unbelievable piece of footage that will be studied for years. The night blast that tore through the Crimea Bridge wasn't just an attack on steel and stone. It was an attack on certainty. And in that uncertainty lies the true power of the footage. It forces us to confront how fragile stability can be, how quickly everything can change. It makes us question the meaning of power, control, and resilience in a world where one spark can ignite a chain reaction. This event reminds us that history is not written in silence, it's written in the roar of explosions, the collapse of structures, and the resilience of people who rebuild. The Crimea Bridge blast will remain one of those defining moments, captured in raw, breathtaking, terrifying clarity. The world watched it burn, the world felt the impact, and even now, as time moves forward, the image of that night remains, flames on the water, steel in the air, silence after the storm. That is the story of the unbelievable footage, the night blast that tore through the Crimea Bridge, and the moment that changed everything, because sometimes one explosion can echo louder than 1,000 words. And that night the world heard it.